Hello from me. I'm Sven. My topic is pretty boring, like especially compared to the other two, because I'm mostly speaking about taxes and insurances and finances and a lot of lawyers and a few failures of a few little mistakes to very big mistakes, and I don't have a lot of success stories. Um, for myself, hopefully a few. That is one of them that is ongoing. But what we deal with Neuland Alliance is bringing European startups to the US. And we deal with all this bureaucratic, boring stuff that nobody wants to deal, especially not in startup. Like in a startup, you don't have these people, you don't have these specialists. That means you always need external help. That means it always costs money. That means everybody hates it, which is understandable and good like that. But I really loved Liam's, wherever he is, take on high risk, high rewards versus low risk and low rewards. And something that we see when startups are coming to us, they're still in this low risk, low reward mode. On a global scale, they're not a big company. On a national scale, they might be the biggest French search startup. But like compared to a Google or an Amazon or a YouTube, which are the search startups, or like all the functionality, they are not big. So on the scale that we're thinking, their risk is still low. But the moment they go to the States, they have to change course because you can't just wing it when you're doing such an expansion. You can't just do it like the Nike boys. You can't just do it lean and agile like we all want to be with these startups. You can't do it with like 4 or 5 people. You need more. And often the startups are coming to us when it's too late. And so we're seeing a lot of failures and a lot of fuck ups where we basically try with a team of like 9 or 10 lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, all these people that we trust to get it out of the mood and get it on the road again. And I will show you like 4 or 5 of these examples, and then talk a little bit about how to avoid it without making this an advertisement for Neuland Alliance. Okay. Easy mistake. Easily avoidable, happens very early. This is a French startup that our accounting strategists support. And we found out that they're spending $700 a month on just transaction fees, which is a little bit too high because usually it's not expensive. But what happened here, and that's like the first lesson that I have to learn. I'm from Germany, so I'm not from the US. So I always have like adjustment and adapting phases when I go to the States. And this was one of the most interesting things. We all have cultural habits, and we all know something from like, I don't know, when do you get a bank account in France? 15, 16, 18? And since we got that bank account, whenever we have to pay something, we do it one way. And you do more or less the same with your company. You just go online, go onto online banking and send them a wire transfer. You can do that in the States too. The problem is it costs you $40 to transfer. And that was a French CEO who was spending like $700 a month just on this wire transfers, which is like one of the easiest mistakes that he don't have to do, but because it's just one meeting at the bank to register for electronic bill payment or PayPal, that's basically it. But if you don't know it, if you just go over and try it, and worst case, if your local French or German or Swedish lawyer is the one person, the one-stop shop for US expansion, he won't know that. He will probably even don't know that this problem could happen. So it needs a little bit more to even avoid something easy as that, and like $8,400 a year, which is not big. So that is still easy. Second one, we see that again and again, and in 2012, I was doing that too. Shouldn't say that loud and live. Working in the USA on like a non-working visa. an A-star visa. We have like, who knows? Yeah, well, we have a system between Europe and the US. It's pretty easy to get a visa, a tourist visa or an require or a business visa, but you're not allowed to work with that. You can make deals. You can get clients, but you're not allowed to work in the US, which means not for your own company, not for other companies. It's not a work permit. And still, startups who are testing the US market, who sometimes incorporated in the US, use these very easy version of a visa, which costs you 10 minutes and I don't know, $50 against probably a couple of months and an immigration lawyer and like $5,000 to have a proper visa. They just use that and send their C-level executives over, or go with some employees over there, set up a company there, and step by step, they run into the problem that they basically are not a visitor anymore, but under US jurisdiction, they are working there, and you're not allowed to do that. So what happens? We have an Italian client, they're a movie production company. They brought over to the US 6 people on A-star visas. You can stay 90 days on one trip. So it was like 90 days, 2 weeks holiday in Italy and coming back to the US. And they made a lot of money, it was good business. The problem is, after like the 6th or 7th time, border control, the TSA agent, who has like, especially under the new administration, everything tracked down to the fucking company name. So this company is blacklisted now. All the people have, we don't know how big the problem is yet. If you can be banned up to 10 years, worst case. And every person who comes from Europe with this company, and the TSA agent sees that, he finds that out. Don't ask me how they do that, I don't know. They will have problems, and they will have to explain, they will have to show the proper visa, and they will probably won't come in with an A-star visa. And that's it with these companies. They had like a huge client base in the US, just built up, pretty fresh, everything cool, ticket sizes way above everything they see in Italy. Now they have to hire people in the US because they can't execute in the US anymore. Because at least for now, till our lawyers have checked what's going on and how do we get them out of this situation where they basically can't go into the US. Yeah, they halted their business. Let's see what happens. We're currently trying to hire them 2 or 3 people just to like work with the clients that they have and to not let the money there. Again, little things, and it costs money, yes, but it costs more money to not be operational in a market that you just build up, and you went cheap at the beginning, and like 6 people, 5,000 pops, like 30,000 against more or less being banned from the US with your entire C-level stuff. Problematic. I was lucky though, never happened to me. Another one, and I know especially here in France, big problem, like the whole hiring, firing, the whole regulations, the labor laws, and especially with French and German companies, we see it again and again that they're like, wow, we're finally in the US, hiring and firing is so pretty easy here, so we can more or less do what we want. That's right, we have to comply to a few things, but they're easy, and it's like, it's a checklist, so that is not complicated. But here again, there are a few rules and regulations that your lawyer or your talent HR guy won't tell you. And in this case, it is in every state of the USA except for Texas. You have to have one special insurance, workers' compensation, which is basically an insurance that if someone here or from the Algolia staff breaks his leg here and Algolia has the fault, then this insurance jumps in and pays for it. And especially in the US, we're talking not like small sums, but we're talking $1 million lawsuits that you always hear from. So basically, you have to have it no matter what, but it's a regulation too. If you don't comply to that, and this is a little bit like the the example of suddenly I had a 90,000 invoice from the French government. These guys that were from Sweden were in the USA for 9 months, had 6 employees, and in the end they had to pay a $50,000 penalty for not having that insurance for 9 months, which would usually cost $4,000 a year. Here again, easily avoidable. It's an easy mistake where if you have the right people and the right consultation, the right maybe checklist, whatever, or you have a company who's done it before and they can help you. That is like the stuff that 50,000 is not a lot for a startup that's expanding to the US. But here again, for a startup, it's a lot. And ask your investor how he thinks about that 50,000 just down the drain. So here again, easily avoidable by just doing some basic things. Anybody asleep yet? Everybody awake? It's boring. Nightmare story. That's like the biggest. Swedish company, tech back end, maybe a little bit like Algolia, a little bit more back end than Algolia. In 2012, they expanded to the US. Best case ever, big ass client, one of the big names in the US, 8-digit contract in the making. So their expansion was $1 million expansion, easy thing. Problem, they use and they love their Swedish lawyers, their Swedish business lawyers. So the whole contract negotiation with this big US company was basically, the lead was at 2, 3, 4 Swedish business lawyers. And they are smart dudes. And they did very good on the negotiation table, but they missed probably not only these 2 sentences, probably it was more, but in like a 50 pages document and 350 attached legal documentations, they missed 2 fucking sentences, which are defining who is leading any lawsuit against both of the companies. In the US, it's always, when someone launches a lawsuit in the US, they're suing everyone who could be involved. So if like a big competitor of this US company is launching an aggressive patent infringement lawsuit against their competitor, which is the client of the Swedish company, then they're not only suing the the US company, but everyone involved, including the Swedish company, which usually, I mean, that is one of the few myths about the US, you probably get sued. But it's not bad. It's a different legal system. We have the common law, like we have the civic law, there's the common law, and with that, that is how they make decisions. So it is no problem. The problem here is if you haven't defined who can structure this case and defines and has the power to have a strategy in that lawsuit. And what happened is, because it was not defined, this big US carrier company just decided to go full frontal with them and just to fight it out, because it was a competitive move and not a real legal or technical move, and they wanted to react like that. While the Swedish company, they don't care about that. They just want to make business, and they want to have keep the right to make business and just settle that patent suit, which is like a couple of 100,000, maybe $1 million, and it's settled. All in all, at the end, they paid $12 million, including legal fees. They were not able to raise another round because, here again, ask the investors what they think about it. And they had to sell pretty cheap a year later and are not in business anymore. And this is like 2 sentences that every US contact lawyer, when you ask him to check it, then it's even cheaper. But like, if he would have done it, 25K approximately, no problem. Would have never happened. It's pretty easy to fail. And the problem here is we haven't even talked about any business or marketing or product questions. We're just talking about this stuff that nobody wants to do. And you will probably fail. And like working with us or working with PwC, AY, or even McKinsey, who sometimes do this internationalizations of companies, won't make sure that you won't fail. It's just about risk mitigation, and especially setting up your US expansion in a way that, best case, your European entity is mitigated from all the US risk, and the US entity is mitigated from the European risk. So there are a lot of little things that you can do. And I think just wrapping up into a don't panic mode, it is no rocket science. And everyone who tries to tell you it's rocket science just tries to write big bills and give you the big invoices and give you the big corporate invoices, because like a little startup can't do it and they can't do something different. That's not true. The important thing is to change the modus operandi and to go from a startup mode, which is in your home country, on your home turf, where you know people, where you know the habits, the cultures, where you know the competition. There you can wing it a little bit, and you can work lean, and you can be a little bit more startup. But when you go to the US, or it's true for when you go from France to Germany, to UK, to wherever, make sure you change that mode, because that not only can cost $700 a month, it can cost you your business. And I think I'm over time, right? It's okay? Okay. Don't ask about Trump.
Hi. What are the most probable mistakes a French startup or European startup would do when it goes to the UK? Because I'm working together with many startups as an investor in some business angel network. Sooner or later they scale, they go to the States, and it's probably one of the things we should do is to actually check if everything has been done correctly. You quoted different case scenario, but in terms of occurrence, I'm not sure they happen very often. So ideally, basically, I would like a checklist of what are the most common mistakes one could make, and in terms of occurrence, not quote one example that may happen.
Sure. We're currently working on a French version of that. We're working with the family, so that will be something that we will publish hopefully soon. I'm with all the lawyers around me. I'm not a lawyer. I'm with startups for like since 2012 as a consultant, as an investor, as a founder, failed founder. So being around these lawyers, I use that sentence more and more. It depends, which is the worst answer ever. I think, like when it comes to sources of mistakes, that is, I think, the bigger question. They use either big corp consultants who invoice big corp and give you big corp solutions, which for startups, it's often just stupid to do that. They take London lawyers because they think it is like very culturally adequate and they speak the language. London lawyers are more expensive than New York City lawyers. Don't. Then they use their home lawyer who want to be the one-stop shop for something like that. Don't. So like use resources in the USA. That is like my main advice. If you want to go and if you have all that question, use US lawyers, use US accountants, use people who have the deep experience and the long experience, and not people who are just like, yeah, I had 2 cases. I registered 2 LLC, Delaware LLCs, which is like never the best option. Can be, probably not. So take resources on the ground in the US. That is like my main learning from actually fucking up one of my startups, bringing them to the US, doing different ways.
Hello, it's not a question, it's just a remark. I used to work for US companies in software, and I remember that we had a very restricted law compliance and regulations to follow. Like, what do you do if a customer gives you some gift, you know, or should you accept a dinner with your boss as a guy? And what are you allowed to speak about? And I think definitely we should train maybe startups on these aspects, because the regular business, like dress code, for instance, they're very different, especially with Latin film. You know?
Yeah. I mean, when I say it's not rocket science, I'm not saying it's easy. Like, it is not easy. It is freaking complex. And like, the difference to a lot of European countries is there one lawyer and one accountant is often enough. In the States, no way. You need a whole team of lawyers to deal with all of that issues, from HR to compliance issues to legal issues, just around such a little question. Yes, it is complex. That is why you need that advice, and you don't wing it.
So how would you check the quality of that? Because well, I've got a friend of mine who's basically recruited someone to do some job, which he did very badly. So now he owes a huge amount of money to the States for taxation reasons. The problem also when recruiting someone locally is that there's a distance. There's sometimes collusion between people locally, and you're in France, they're abroad. So you don't understand what's going on. And my idea was to actually sort of double check and recruit two people. One would check the work of the other one, but then you get into some very twisted, you know, way of doing it. But if that's what he had done, then he would not be into the problem he is now. And that was something very basic.
Our experience is like Algolia did. You go over with at least one C-level person. You can't just hire people. There's so many communication gaps, cultural gaps, business gaps, product gaps. You need one of the decision makers in the US for 90% of the cases. There's some, especially when it's apps, when you're selling through the app store, like, that is pretty easy. That is actually simple, because Apple and Google are trying to make it so simple to just be international that it hurts when you see it, how simple it is. It's amazing. Besides that, you need people on the ground, and you probably need C-level people on the ground for at least half a year, probably forever. Yeah. And Algolia is one of the great examples. They did it early and they did it freaking well. And I mean, last round, 53 million, I think. And that is the benefit of being in the States. And that is always like our take on, I hate to see that so many US companies are winning over and over again, but the European companies are better, are quicker, are further down the road. But just because they don't have this biggest market and this big as VC money, they just don't become internationally competitive. So that is one of the reasons why I did Neuland Alliance with my partner in New York, to get more European startups earlier to a stage where they can be on international ground, and to not rip them off like a lot of service providers are doing, who just see their bankroll and their money, but having kind of this vision of seeing way more European startups in the US because they're crushing it over there. So
on that note, do you ever trade services for equity?
we?
Yeah.
No. Legally, it's not possible because it is legal advice and legal consultation, and with that, you have conflict of interest. We are currently thinking about setting up a separate fund to bridge the gap between Europe and the US. So we are starting some negotiations, but it won't happen next year.
And
probably
is that a difference
19.
between European companies and US companies? Because I currently work for a startup in New York, and we do that with our services. We work with a lot of startups.
Legal services?
No, it's marketing services.
Yes, that's possible.
Okay.
With all the legal stuff, you're not able to do that. When you're a legal counsel in any way, if it's immigration or contracts or even the financial advisors are not allowed to take equity. Yeah. Finny. Last question.
Talk about a lot about taxes and legal and all of that. Do you also provide assistance in cultural differences and what's the difference between doing business in Europe and doing business in the US and all of that, which is not, again, it's not legal, it's not science.
Yeah, legal is not science too, just so many. It's not science at all. Yes, kind of. We have like partners who do workshops. Currently not in Paris. That would probably something that we would facilitate through the family. But in Berlin, London, and Amsterdam, we have people who do that, who live over there, but are from the home countries. But that is not our core business. We want you when you're ready and not when you're thinking about it. We help in thinking about it by figuring out the first parts, but we're not doing that amount of hand-holding. We help and support with finding first customers and users. That is part of what we're doing. So a little bit of PR, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of growth engine building. But this is like the first 100 days. After that, we're off because we want you to grow and we can't do your job. Yeah. I have another hour till I'm at the airport. So maybe we can just, yeah, exactly. Thank you.